Do you ever start something that you were expecting to work and then you end up immediately blown away by how much that thing exceeded your expectations? Well, that is me right now because I am 3 days into running the Justin Harris carb cycling plan, and all I can say is holy guacamole. Now, this ain't my first rodeo with carb cycling, and this isn't the first time I've worked with Justin, because back in 2017, when I made my first run at 242 coming down from 320, he ran my diet into that meet, and it was easily the most successful dieting phase I've ever had in my life. Now, the reason I stopped working with Justin back then is I was a broke student at the time, and I just couldn't afford to keep going after the meet was done. And with how successful it was, I've always tried to lean on carb cycling as a diet strategy because of how well it worked when Justin was running it. But since then, I couldn't quite find the magic when I was trying to do it on my own. The issue wasn't a knowledge thing because I knew how Justin ran things when we worked together. I'd read all of his books, I'd listened to every single piece of content that he put out, but I still wasn't getting it because the problem was what I was doing with that knowledge and the experience necessary to not bullshit myself in the decisions I was making, because I was always deciding to try to prioritize that high day and those medium days way too long, which meant that in order to sustain a net deficit through the week, my low days had to be absolutely cratered, which always ended up biting me right in the ass.
And we're back, day 120 of this cut, and carb cycling is freaking wild. Because how Justin has it set up, he's got a high carb day, which was first one on Saturday. He's got low days, which was yesterday. Then he's got medium days, which happen, I guess, on my normal training days. So 3 days a week are medium days. But basically how it's working is the high day is a really big step up from the calories I was running. The low day is a pretty big step down, and the medium days are a little bit of a step up.
And yeah, I got a discipline with food problem when I am running stuff on my own. And yes, I could take the time to develop the habits necessary to successfully diet myself past this point, but I ain't got time for that because the clock is ticking. And if I want to do what I want to do before the end of my powerlifting career, having someone tell me exactly what I need to be doing is going to be the best solution. And with how Justin set this up, even though those high days are a big step up and the medium days are a big step up from what I was previously training on, they're less of a step than I would have wanted to take had I set up this plan on my own. And after Saturday's high day, I was freaking feeling so hungry in my stomach, but I was actually surprised at how well I was feeling under the barbell, because with how sketchy this incline bench setup felt, I was not expecting to be able to load 275 on here. And after that handout from Darrell, it was like, holy shit, we might be on our way back to finding some strength again. And my hope is for this time around working with Justin, I am a whole lot more mature than I was back in 2017. So instead of just suffering through the plan, I want to use listening to him to help me build that restraint, that discipline, and the habits necessary to do it better on my own. And if your training is looking stagnant, just doing the same things the same way over and over again isn't going to be what gets the ball rolling. What you need to do is bring the right intent to the right movements with the right technique in order to get past that sticking point. And if you don't know where to start, hit the link below and join the team so I can look at all of your lifts to give you individualized coaching every single day so that you know exactly what it is that you need to be doing to drive progress like never before. Prices are going to be going up here very soon, so hit the link below to sign up now and lock in the lower rate.
So it's like, surprise, surprise, maybe there is something to biasing more calories around my training session. Even if I do feel like more tummy hungry, like there definitely is a lot more in the tank than last week. And because Darrell is here, I'm going to take advantage of it and
jam out on some machine presses with the homies, because one of the things that I have missed the most as of late, since my training has felt weak as shit, I haven't been training with the crew as much because I simply don't want to feel like I'm in their way of doing the work that they need, which meant that my primary goal today was to not get beat by Miana on the machine chest press, which was kind of a legitimate concern because the last time that I ran this machine was on a day where I got a little bit of a twinge in the pec and one plate felt really, really, really heavy. So it was quite relieving to start with two and have it feel at least half decent. But then Darrell had to go and toss four on for his first work set. So I felt like I might have been in a little bit of trouble. Because again, knowing what I bench and knowing what Darrell benches, even if I am dieting pretty hard, there ain't no excuse for getting beat by a deadlift specialist on any pressing exercise. So, tossed on three with the hope of making this feel like a feeler set. And after that first rep, a little bit sticky at the bottom, but man, it felt like I was waking up and my pecs were actually working pretty damn well on this thing today. So I figured that we could probably try to be a little bit aggressive with the jumps, but then Darrell had to go and load up 4 and a 10, so I was in trouble once again. And credit's got to go to Darrell, though, because even if he is maybe seeing this as an opportunity to surpass me in bench in the short term, he has been cranking the absolute shit out of all of his pressing accessories, and it is really starting to show, which has me a little bit excited on one side, but also a little bit afraid. So I had to give 4 plates a run here, which I think had me even more excited because I know that if my machine press is here right now and having that little injection of calories brought strength back up this much, it's like even if my barbell stuff still isn't back to where it should be, on a machine where I'm not limited by groove or stability, if I can still contract this hard, we're going to be in at least a half decent spot.
And like, no shit, the extra food is making a difference, which is kind of making me kick myself a little bit for not having the self-restraint necessary to make carb cycling work previously. But figure we're gonna take advantage of that and go 4 to 10 to try to match Darrell.
And that asshole heard me saying that to the camera, then immediately came back to slap 425 on, even though he said he was done. And you know what? It kind of pissed me off, but I'm kind of glad that I'm back to the point where I actually can start to push him again, which is only going to make both of us get better. Because it's like, what are training partners for other than making fun of you for the silly faces you make on a RP10 accessory set? But Darrell doing that just meant that it was time for me to wake up, act like an adult, and try to press some big boy weights. And like, on one side, I want to say that I got no clue where this came from, but it is just having those extra carbs around the training session that made this happen. And even if I did fall a little bit short on reps, I don't think I could be more stoked with that as I moved into my all-time favorite tricep accessory of all time, which we're running on the floor today simply due to laziness because the incline bench was on the other side of the gym and I didn't want to carry it over, and the floor seemed like the simpler solution, which actually ended up feeling really, really, really good after all the weeks running it on the incline bench. Because it's like the incline, the leverage does make it a little bit harder to move weight. So on a day where the goal is moving weight on this accessory, we decided we were going to move some weight and be a little bit aggressive with the jumps going straight to 2 plates, which once again surprised me immensely with how well it moved. And at this point in the session, I was just on cloud 9 because I was expecting another very sad feeling training day.
And that felt really good, so we're gonna take advantage of it and go 245.
The reason I like JM presses so much for building a bench press, well, first I got to clarify that I'm not an idiot because I know that just because there is more weight in the hands doesn't mean that there's more tension at the muscle fiber level, but what having more weights in the hands does for us is it gets us used to pushing through the triceps with the same kind of weights we need to on bench at very similar joint angles to where our sticking point ends up being, and because of that and the strength curve, you get insane carryover, and I am so freaking grateful that JMs are coming back.
And another thing that I'm very grateful for is Tyler is actually here again today, but he is running the team programming speed bench day, which means that
we can't train together.
well, we can't train together, but I get to go sneaky catch up on the Delt machine without him making me feel bad about myself because he's way too skinny to be able to beat me on anything.
So the plan here was to freaking crank in Tyler's absence so that he isn't seeing what I'm doing to play off of me, so that when we do start training together again, he will be surprised by hopefully the amount of littleness that he is surpassing me by on this machine. And it's like, this machine, the strength curve on it just exposes my delts so freaking much that I know if I do get better at it, good things are gonna happen. And based on the first set with 310s, figured we should definitely go and load up 4 to give that a run, which kind of kicked my ass the previous week. And I know a lot of this is, again, just having more carbs around this training session, but I was really stoked to start seeing progress on some accessories because it has felt like a very long time since we've seen any of that.
Was gonna say we are so back, but I don't know if we're actually back. We're just doing a lot less worse than we have been the last couple of weeks, which again, I am so freaking stoked to not feel like I'm gonna die doing really little accessory work.
I figured I should take advantage of that energy and crank on something that I haven't run too much in the past because I really didn't have access to a great cable machine for delt raises. But now that I've ran one both last week and this week, I'm starting to believe the hype because that tension in the bottom carrying all the way to the top is very nice for generating a massive amount of front delt work. And to make it even more front delty, I'm running these in the scapular plane, meaning that I am raising my arm in the plane of the scapula, so I'm not straight ahead. I'm more like 45-ish degrees out to the side. And the reason that is important is if we are moving the scapular plane, it ensures that the front delt is doing most of the work. You still can have a little bit of clavicular pec kicking in, but I always like to try to feel my pec as I'm doing the front raise to make sure that the pec isn't contracting super hard, because the goal of a front raise is to make it as front delty as possible. And even if the goal here was to crank, I needed to be mindful that if I blasted my front delts too hard today, it would get in the way of my main delt day. So we moved on to this oh so sweet multi-grip lat pull down machine, which I also had to be a little bit cautious on because the protocol I was running is straight out of a 2016 John Meadows and Dave Tate video that came out right when the ELITEFTS multi-grip pull down handle was released. And the protocol that they ran was a mechanical drop set where they started out wide and then moved narrower on the handle. And ever since doing that for the first time, it has been one of my favorite lat pull down protocols to run, simply because of the amount of pumpage that you get. And I know that with what we know now in regards to hypertrophy research, running intensifiers might not be the best thing for you in terms of managing fatigue, but the pump just feels freaking good. It's fun. It's great to dig into. And as long as I am managing the amount that I'm pushing on each handle, I found that the fatigue detriment of running a similar protocol to that isn't all that high. And the pump trade-off is definitely worth it because who doesn't love digging into an oh so sweet lat pump extravaganza? And the other reason I like this protocol on this machine even better than with the Elite handle is that this machine tries to carry the arms away from you as you're raising, and it creates a huge amount of stretch exactly where I feel like my range of motion is missing since the pec surgery. So being able to dig under that time of retention and get that stretch going, it has been freaking huge for me in helping to open things up. But I mean, who am I kidding? The pump is what I'm really here for.
And that is absolutely the greatest pull down machine of all time.
Which meant it was time to move on to the heaviest pec deck of all time, because this machine is just insane with how little plates you need on the stack to work really freaking hard. And I think the biggest benefit of this machine isn't the heaviness of it, but the strength curve, because it is pretty linear from top to bottom, meaning that at the bottom in the stretch position, it feels just as heavy as it does when you are fully contracted. And the problem with most pec decks that I have is that the bottom end feels super light, so you're not really challenging that stretch position. And coming back from the pec tear, it's that stretch position that needs the most challenge. And I'm giving this machine a lot of credit for how good my pec feels right now post surgery. And in an attempt to try to demonstrate how heavy this machine is,
Travis asked to work in, which I was hoping would make me look good because he's using the same weight as me, but he's making it look much easier, so I'm a little bit ashamed. But it seems freaking heavy though.
Oh yeah.
Well, 4 reps away from hit goal.
although I did feel a little bit emasculated watching Mr. Saucy Muscles be super assertive out of the bottom end, I wasn't about to try to keep up with that level of contraction because even though this does feel really good on the pec, it still is the slightest bit vulnerable in the bottom, so I want to make sure I'm really metering that contraction as I drive through all the way to the top. And what I want you to notice here is as I am going to the top of the fly, I'm reaching forward into a little bit of protraction because pec leverage wise, in order for the pec to contract as hard as it can at the top, we need to have some of that forward scap travel to let us actually use the pec. Plus, if we get that serratus contraction going along with the pec, it's only going to enhance the action and it's going to help huge with being able to hold up through the entire range on bench press. And up next, to add to that, we swapped over to the other pec deck because the other pec deck feels very similar strength curve wise, but is a whole lot lighter, so it's more appropriate for rear delt flies. Plus, we got the nice horizontal handle, which makes it even better. But we were also going for that protraction intent here as well, because part of that bench hold up is teaching the serratus to work together with the rear delt as we're spreading into the bar. And yes, this does limit range of motion compared to if we were letting ourselves retract back into the rear delt fly. But if we're getting further by just retracting, we're not actually moving the humerus further in relation to the scapula. So if we're trying to train rear delts, it kind of does become a little bit of wasted action because the active range of the rear delt at the scapula isn't all that big. And if you are someone that does want to bias more lengthened positions, yes, you could hold in retraction, but I find the serratus carryover to bench press works way freaking better if we are able to hold that protraction the entire time.
And I find that intent super freaking good if you got a lifter that is struggling with holding the scap on their rib cage on bench, especially off the underrack, because that underrack stability is going to be rear delt spreading in the bar, serratus pulling against rib cage, and if we can dial it in here, it gets way more easy to find on the actual bench press.
And we moved on from there to finish the session up with one of my all-time favorites, standing abs, but with a little twist, literally, because I'm trying to twist into the obliques on the way down versus just moving forward backwards in the sagittal plane. And the reason I've been jamming on more oblique stuff as of late is really just a last-ditch Hail Mary to try to recover some bracing ability as my waist gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And even if I'm not sure if it is working yet, it does make the ab work a little bit more interesting to toss some different movements in, touch some rotation, and that little bit of extra fun, I ain't going to complain about because running abs 4 days a week, it does tend to get a little bit monotonous. So until I have a reason to not run these with some oblique, I'm probably going to keep the oblique in at least until I start to get bored again.
And I just realized the first time that I filmed the conclusion that my mic receiver wasn't connected. So I have no idea for how long I didn't have audio, but at least I got the voiceover straight over the log. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem, just a mild inconvenience. But what I was saying the first time around the conclusion is that with how today feels, like I am so stoked to get rolling on the carb cycling. And like the reason that I didn't carb cycle for this phase of the cut when I did on the first segment of it into my last meet is that into my last meet, because I was the one making decisions, I ran myself into a really hard wall. And the reason I kind of like carb cycling all comes back to the first time I worked with Justin because it worked so freaking well. And the difference between working with Justin and trying to run it on my own is that when I'm running it on my own, I'm the one making the decisions. And my tendencies are that I like food. So I always try to crank the high days too high or keep the high days too high for too long. And in order to keep the high days that high for as long as I was, my low days were getting way too low, my mid days were getting way too low, and the little bit of calories I get injected on the mid days weren't enough to keep training feeling good. So I absolutely cratered towards the end of that last cut, and that's what I was trying to avoid through the first part of this one. But because Justin is running this and he's the one calling the numbers, like where he's starting me was far less aggressive on both the high end and the low end compared to what I would have done on my own, which is really exciting because it means that I'm probably going to do a whole lot better at sustaining the diet this time around. And I think like how today felt, I am so freaking excited to move forward. And like, that's why I'm so pro hiring a coach, because if you don't know how to make the right decisions, even if you have the information, it becomes very difficult to make the right calls when you're in it and you're letting emotions dictate your decisions, whether it be diet and training. And like the reason I don't have a coach for powerlifting and I'm okay with it is I've taken 13 years up to this point to figure my shit out in powerlifting, so I'm not letting the emotions get in the way of my decisions. But if I was brand new and I would do it all over again, I would probably have someone helping me a whole lot sooner. And all I can think about with that is looking at my guy Keelan, who is on a freaking insane trajectory. And the thing that I'm the most proud of with Keelan is that I've kept him from making all of these stupid choices that I made because I've made those stupid choices. So I think on one side, like doing it yourself is valuable because it forces you to learn things the hard way. And if you learn things the hard way, you will develop a better, true understanding. But if all you want to do is just do good, like getting someone to make the calls for you is going to save you a lot of suffering. It's going to save you a lot of mistakes. It's going to save you a lot of time because you won't have to learn how to make the right choices, because the right choices are just going to be made from you. And if you learn from the choices that someone else is making for you, you're going to be so much further ahead than you would if you were just screwing up, trial and error, just trying to get your shit together. Because with the dieting, I haven't learned how to do it yet, and I figured that it's much better to have someone else just doing it so I can learn from it versus continuing to ram my head against the wall. And like, that's the whole thing I'm trying to do with the team right now, is just make powerlifting coaching accessible to everyone, because with that, I'm able to give so much feedback to every single person in there every single day. And because I'm telling people what they need to be thinking about in regards to the accessories, how they're doing the accessories, what they're thinking about their secondaries, what they're thinking about their main lifts, and how to dial that in, just the progress is insane. It makes it so much fun for me to want to be in there every single day. So if you want to get better at powerlifting, hit the link below, join the team, because it doesn't make sense how good we are making it at the cost. So take advantage of that before the prices go up, because that is going to be happening very soon again. So lock in now to find some savings. Peace out. Have a good night.